Welcome to Dr. Crystal's podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. I am your host, Dr. Crystal, a doctor of East Asian medicine and a holistic transformational coach. Here we will shine light on wisdom keepers, paradigm shifters who inspire us to live thriving, joyful lives. Let's be inspired. Although I am a doctor of East Asian medicine, this podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. It does not replace professional medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare provider for guidance on your personal health needs. Hello, welcome to Dr. Crystal's podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. I am your host, Dr. Crystal, and I'm so grateful and excited to have our guest, Julie Kiddoo. She has lived in the Bell Valley, for nearly 31 years. She's married to the love of her life, has two children who are 20 and 22, and she is the author of Bipolar, B-Y-E Polar, a journey of resilience, power, and freedom, sharing her lived experience with anxiety, depression, and the hope she found along the way. She has been recovering from a concussion for the past year, which has sent her on a new healing journey she never knew she wanted or needed. So I'm just so delighted to have you on and to hear your sacred story.
Thank you, Crystal. It's an honor to be here.
So to start, I would love to hear what does sacred mean to you?
Well, I'm going to be really honest. I actually had to Google what sacred meant because I've had a feeling in my heart of what it is, and I guess in Googling, I don't know. I just feel like it's something that is near and dear to my heart, something holy, spiritual, almost unexplainable.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, like maybe in some ways like private, yet nothing. I I used to keep everything private. Now I love sharing my
Hmm.
stories. I've just never called them sacred. So you definitely made me think a little bit about what sacred meant. But I think just really near and dear to my heart and something that one can't necessarily see. It's more of a feeling.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. So I'm so excited to hear more about your story. You have so many multifaceted life and stories to share. And it sounds like the one that's near and dear to your heart right now is your healing journey over this last year. So I'd love to hear um, about your concussion and, what happened. When did it was a year ago. And so I'll give the floor to you.
Yeah, I think to share about the last year, I probably will go back 38 years ago and paraphrase what led me to writing a book. As Dr. Crystal said, it is bipolar, BYE dash polar. And when I was a senior in high school, I've never really liked change. But my senior year of high school, I had such a fear of going off to college that um, I had horrible anxiety, which turned into depression, which eventually turned into missing 2 quarters of my senior year. Um, in that 2 quarters I missed, I was in the hospital for over 2 months and labeled bipolar and put on taken off medication, put cold turkey, which we know these days is a no-no. This was back in 1987, and then put on copious amounts of medication to get me out of the funk I was in. I was catatonic, and then eventually graduated from high school, went off to college, did another little stint in the hospital my freshman year of college, only for 2 weeks that time. Um, and probably in 2005, I was unlabeled bipolar. However, I know what it's like to live with the shame and the stigma of having a label, and I still deal with depression and anxiety. So um, that really just like paraphrases that there's so much more that went back to me becoming hospitalized, and you can certainly ask me about that time, but I'm super spiritual. I have a big faith in God, which I didn't was never part of my upbringing, and I used to teach yoga, practice yoga, and God really found me on my yoga mat in 2019, and And so I've been doing my best the last several years to walk by faith and not by sight. And I know that can sound kind of woo woo. And as a recovering control freak, it's been really powerful. But yeah, so December 9th last year, I was swimming, which happened to be the 39th or the 37th anniversary of when I was hospitalized my senior year of high school.
Oh,
And
wow.
so this year will be 38 years. And I couldn't stand that date a long time ago because it just represented just so much fear of being hospitalized and all that came with that. And since then, I've done a lot of healing and came to really embrace the day and grateful for how far I've come. But I would say before I hit my head, uh, about a year ago, maybe even just a couple weeks before, it was the first time I had prayed openly out loud to God, asking Him to help me change my relationship with alcohol. And I I wouldn't say that I was an alcoholic. I mean, I feel like that's a whole other topic of um, alcohol use or abuse, and I wouldn't say I uh, was an alcoholic. Like I could live without it. I could not drink. And I just didn't love the way I felt when I drank, but it's something I always did. It was kind of a coping mechanism, albeit maybe not the healthiest, but just like, oh, I'm gonna have a couple beers at night, and then I'm like, oh, I don't care if I don't sleep well, but yet the next day I was like, why did you not care?
Right.
So after I hit my head, it then turned into a concussion, which turned into vertigo, and I've since gotten rid of the vertigo. But what it did really in the spring of this year was I felt like I had anxiety, like just pouring out of my body in a way that I never had.
Mm.
And or I had depression so low that there were days where I was like, I don't know if I can if I can't live, if I'm going to live like this, I don't know that I want to live.
Mm.
And so I started doing, well, I've done lots of things. I have lots of tools in the kit. Some work, some don't, some are new, some were refined, some thrown out. But I started doing Amazing Brains this summer with brain mapping and neural feedback. And I thought, if I'm going to spend this much time and money getting my brain remapped, I'm going to give it its biggest, best, brightest chance to heal and recover. So the last beer I had was May 18th. It was the day after my son graduated from college. And I've really just been focusing on wanting to feel good. And though it's been a crazy journey, Crystal, because it's alcohol, hot power yoga. Those used to be things that I do. They were part of my identity. They were my coping tools. So it's taken me on a journey of really discovering who am I without these things. And it's been painful and yet like tenfold more beautiful for what I'm discovering and learning about myself.
Right.
And it's just the beginning, I feel.
Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit because that was just so your timeline a little bit like you when you were a young woman in high school, you were diagnosed and hospitalized. Were you hospitalized because you were having a breakdown or did you attempt suicide?
No, I never in my young life, I never had suicide ideation. However, I was so depressed, the anxiety that I had that followed my senior year then manifested into depression that was so severe. I literally wasn't functioning.
Mm,
My parents had pulled me out of school for what we thought was going to be a couple of days,
right.
and it ended up being, as I said, two quarters. Um,
Okay.
and so I literally I knew my social security number, I knew how to get myself dressed, but I couldn't, I really couldn't function. And so my parents, and back then this was in 1987, mental health issues weren't talked about at
Right.
all. And my mother especially was a pit bull for getting me well. And um, I had been seeing a psychiatrist that fall to help manage the medication that I was put on. Um, and they just didn't know what to do to get me well. So I was admitted into a mental health hospital. It was meant for for adolescents. Um, and and then when I was admitted, that first night they had taken me cold turkey off of the antidepressant I was on, and I think I was on Xanax, and I mean it was I already was feeling horrible, and then I felt really horrible
Oh,
after that.
yes. Yeah.
And so that's what led me to becoming hospitalized. Is just I wasn't functioning, wasn't thriving.
Yeah, because they took you cold turkey off of medicine. Okay, that's not why you were hospitalized. You were hospitalized because you weren't functioning. And was there anything that happened, or was it just happened and you couldn't track anything, any trauma, or it was just,
Yeah, well, in kind of I didn't know at the time, and as I've done a lot of work on trauma in the last several years, and yeah, one might think, when I got hospitalized, like how did this happen? I have two loving parents. We had, a great home, and I went to a great school, and I had great friends. And how could Julie become so depressed? Well, if you back up, when I was uh, six, well, let me go further back even. Um, when I was seven, I was, and I realize some of this stuff can be sensitive for people. So I just want to say that it's not hard for me to talk about, but it might be hard for others to hear. Um,
yeah, thank you for
I,
that warning. And there's probably so many people who can relate to it.
yeah, so I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and lived in a really neat neighborhood until I was seven. And then my parents were building a house in the country, and for 9 months we lived in a townhome. Uh, we had moved out of our Minneapolis home and waiting for our country home to be built. And while I was there, we had a babysitter, and the babysitter had molested me
Oh, so
multiple
sorry.
times, and I kept it a secret from my mom and
Yeah.
dad for 10 years. So when I was a senior and I was in this funk, my mom was like, she had, I think, had a suspicion, that something had happened. And she was like, what did, he do to you? Did you smoke pot? Like, what have you, going through all the things. And then when I was reading or write, when I was writing my book, I was reading Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly.
Mm,
And in there, she had quoted this researcher, psychologist, James Pennybaker, and he had a study of two different groups: people who were sexually abused and shared it, and people who were sexually abused and kept it a secret. And the impacts of depression and anxiety on the ones who had kept it a secret was far more significant than the ones who had shared. And
mm,
so his thing is like, it doesn't matter, like just confiding, even if in one other person, can make a huge difference,
mm.
versus the secret keeping. So I see, and I,
Right.
and I, when I started seeing my first healer, I'd seen a lot of psychiatrists and therapists, and in when I'd started my yoga journey in 2007, I had seen a woman who was clairvoyant and clairaudient, and that might sound woo woo, but I was telling her my story minus the sexual abuse, and she said she could see that something had happened to me when I was seven, because she could see stuck energy in my second chakra,
Hmm.
between my belly button and my pubic bone, and I was like, what? How did you know? And then she was saying, when we keep things a secret like that, it just manifests as depression. And then when we can change our thoughts around what happened, we can start releasing. And at that time, I'm like, change my thoughts. Like my thoughts own me. Like that isn't even
I am.
possible. So anyway, so back to your question though. So looking back, it's like, okay, that being molested and not sharing. And then when I was 16, so this would have happened probably 14 months before I became super depressed. I was backpacking, and this is both of these stories are in my book, but I was backpacking with a high school friend in the mountains of Colorado, and we were both sexually assaulted. And I
Oh,
have no doubt that had we not been rescued, we would have probably been raped and left for dead. And
yeah.
so I would just imagine, back then that those things just weren't talked about. And my mom did know, and took me to the pediatrician, and he just said, oh, she'll be fine, just keep an eye out. Whereas now we know if that happens, it's like you'd get into therapy and work on the trauma.
Yeah.
So I do think, I have no doubt that I probably have the propensity to, just it's part of my makeup to have anxiety and depression. But I think those traumas um, had exacerbated,
Right.
probably led to the depression getting so bad.
Right. And then that age, right? You're 16, 17, 18. That's like you're becoming a woman. So of course, then all of that you hadn't really dealt with is in the background, filling you like with possible shame or, and it's just
Oh
hard
yeah.
to blossom without having done all the work that you have done now. So thank you for the courage to share that part of your story because unfortunately it's more common than we realize, right? Statistically, sexual assault, sexual abuse as a child. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And then to come to the current place that's so inspiring, on top of that, with your story, that you were, I also want to acknowledge that you were diagnosed bipolar and then you weren't then it was no longer. And then you found yoga and even had your own yoga studio that was successful and well known in the Valley. And now you're on this another spiritual journey. And did you say you hit your head around the anniversary of the hospitalization? Is that right? Is that what I heard you share?
Yeah, on the actual date.
Isn't
It
that
was
significant I mean, to me, that is
yeah.
so significant because I think even in craniosacral work, they say that if you haven't fully healed from a trauma, that you will somehow recreate it so that you can continue the healing. And so it's almost like the miracle and the gift of hitting your head was this next layer of healing for you.
Mm. Oh my gosh, no pun intended, but you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and you bring up a really good point. Well, one, I love what you said, and what really showed in the last year, and especially in the spring when the anxiety and depression I were experiencing was so awful, was this real fear of not being okay. And I was like, what? Where's this coming from? Like and I think, yeah, I would to say over a year ago that I felt fully mentally healed from what I had gone through. I think for a long time, subconsciously, the fear of getting hospitalized again and the fear of not being okay or not being in control. I mean, as I said, I'm a recovering control freak. So I know, like, from trauma, it's like, I love control because it makes me feel safe, but yet it actually makes me exhausted.
Right.
um, but yeah, and I think that what you just said is a beautiful gift of this concussion is getting to revisit, um, yeah, getting to know myself in a new way. So while I was doing Amazing Brains this past summer, I really delved in deep with my therapist and doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and internal family systems. And I mean, we
Mm,
went into the basement and
mm,
really looked at, um, especially my 7-year-old self and what she was thinking then and what she
mm.
needed. And um, so it was pretty powerful. Like, I don't think I would have been able to access that level of healing had I not hit my head.
Right. And well, and then choosing to be sober and that I mean not that you weren't sober but choosing to take out alcohol so that you could heal on a whole nother level. I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about because one, going through perimenopause, menopause as women, you made that prayer, God, please help me change my relationship with alcohol because perimenopausal women, our ability to metabolize alcohol significantly decreases as our estrogen decreases, and it becomes
Mm.
even more toxic for our body to process. And then your brain healing, I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Amen, but he's well known for his brain health research, and he did scans on people's brains, and what he saw, what alcohol does to a brain, even just 8 drinks a week shrinks the brain and decreases cognitive functioning. And then there was another study in 2025 done with another organization where there's a link to dementia. Like
Oh
long
wow.
time drinkers, just, not even just having just casual drinking, one or two a night, there's a link to shrinkage of the brain and to cognitive decline and a link to Alzheimer's. And so I commend you for making that decision for the healing of your brain and for your body so that you can thrive in this part of your life in a really good way and have longevity, good brain health, hormonal health. I mean, it's all like it's
Mm.
inspiring to me because, I'm going through menopause and I have one drink and I can't sleep. And like I'm up at 3 a.m. or I'm irritable and not as functional the next day, don't feel as good. And I too am ready to just be like, I'm done. But it's so hard in our society, especially when our partners drink, our family members drink, or we go to Christmas party, holiday parties, and that's how people socialize is it's like normalized to just have a glass of wine, no big deal. But it's like for me, it feels like poison in my body,
Yeah.
and I don't I I had my grandfather had dementia and I don't want my children to have to go through that, So
Mm.
you're an inspiration to me, so thank
Oh,
you.
well, thank you. Yeah, it's yeah, the health reasons, and then it's so interesting. And this is, I guess it's hard to admit, and yet they say, as Jesus said, the truth, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I never would have admitted this before, but I think looking back, I I really did use alcohol as a coping tool. And I know I alluded to that earlier in this call, but I and I was never willing to give it up. I wanted it to change, but I mean, if I had $1 for every Monday morning I woke up, I'm like, all right, we're gonna clean it up. And maybe I'd make it to Monday night, maybe Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday, and what came with that though was this shame and this guilt, and then like, oh, I got the battle of the bulge, and then even more anxiety because it would affect my sleep,
Mhm.
and then it affected my next day. And I love that you say that about the hormones because I didn't even realize that, but I'm like, geez, the older I get, I'm like, I just can't handle it like I used to. Um, and now like, and maybe it's just all the new healing things I've done too with amazing brains. I've also been doing what's called syntonics with my eyes. I went to a special eye doctor that comes up from Denver a couple times a month, and my eyes, I guess, don't track right. And she said, you've probably had this your whole life, and maybe
Mm.
hitting your head kind of shook something loose. But when your eyes aren't tracking right, she said it really affects your amygdala, and then it puts you in fight, flight, or freeze all the time. And I'm like, well, and growing up, like I was in the remedial classes for reading. I had horrible reading comprehension. I could read a paragraph and I couldn't tell you one thing of what it said, or
Mm.
math. And so she said, yeah. And so now we're retraining. I wear these funny glasses for 12 minutes a day. And well, when the weather was nice, I would do it outside with natural light. Now I have this light bulb and I stare at it for 12 minutes, and that's like another healing tool. And so as I am kind of healing in a new way and releasing these old traumas, I don't have the anxiety that I used to. I mean, I look back and I'm like, my nervous system was always like,
Mm.
um, and I didn't realize though, and I don't, for people who drink casually, like I don't want to make it wrong. Just like I was on medication for a long time. I'm not on any medication now. I'm on, supplements and bioidentical hormones, but I never want to make it wrong. Because I know when I was on a mood stabilizer and I, read yoga articles, get off the medication, get off. And I felt so much shame and stigma. So I want to be sensitive to that. I also want to be sensitive to people who have a healthy relationship with alcohol, that I'm not like here to make it wrong. And though maybe it's a good question to ask, like, am I feeling my best? And so I think it's just a good place to be an inquiry about. And I
Yeah. Yeah, be curious
yeah, be
and
curious. And
track how you feel the next day.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's been hard. My husband drinks, my kids enjoy it, and I get like FOMO sometimes, and then I
Mm.
lately I get a little righteous. Like it bothers me more now. And so it's like, okay, Julie, just stay in your own lane. Like work on yourself, and you can't control what other people are doing. So it's been challenging, and though there's no growth in that happens inside of the comfort zone.
Right.
It happens outside, but it really take something. And then there's days where I'm like, oh, fuck it. Like, sorry, pardon my
No.
French, but like, I'm just, you know what? I'm just going to drink, just fit in with my family. And then it's like, but I don't want to, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh.
Um, so yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your self-awareness and your mindfulness and your willingness to pivot and grow and change and stay on the path in our human way. We're perfectly imperfect, and
Mhm.
thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your truth and your authenticity. Before we close, is there a sacred practice that you do that you'd like to share with people?
Yeah, well, I think this is a perfect time. I think really, I mean, I have so many tools that I use, but really it is my time with God and meditation. And I meditate every morning. And that's my quiet time, where I pray and I really I do my best to turn things over to God. And I realize that that can trigger people. I mean, I'm never going to please everyone, but I don't want to hide it either. Cause for a long time, I didn't have a relationship with a higher power. And I look back and I can see where God was with me every step of the way, even though I didn't know him. Um, and though, like for me, it's like it brings me so much peace. And as a recovering control freak, I want to control things. So that quiet time, the meditation, the being still, even if I'm thinking the whole time, it's just forcing myself to sit, to close my eyes, to connect to my breath, to maybe I do some breath work, um, or some chakra clearing or things like that. But I would say, Crystal, I mean, there's a lot of things I do. Um, and I exercise and I get outside and spend time in nature, but that quiet time in prayer is probably, um,
Oh.
yeah, I mean, some days I'm half nuts anyway, but I would be like 100% nuts if I didn't, if,
I
if I didn't start and end my day in meditation.
I totally understand. We have that in common. That's the juice, right? That quiet alone time first thing in the morning. Sometimes I like to get up before everybody else does if I can, and while it's still a little bit dark and just have that quiet time. Yeah. Oh, it's so precious. So I relate, and thank you for sharing. So if people wanted to find you and your book, how can they find you?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. On Instagram, I'm Julie Kiddoo, real exciting. JuliekIddoo. That's my Instagram name. Um, if people want to email me, it's bipolar book, BYEPOLAR book at gmail.com. That would be the best way. And this is for sale at the Bookworm,
Oh,
of
great.
Edwards, and on Amazon. Just a little sales spiel of this. I wrote this came out in 2018, so it is my journey of a lot of what I shared today. Obviously, not the concussion because that happened a year ago, but the the sexual assault, all that, and then the healing that I really found along the way from yoga and meditation. That came out in 2018, and then I think there's another book percolating, but I think the story is still being written.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thank you for being here at the Dr. Crystal podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. I also want to let you all know January 3rd, I'm having a 1 hour live workshop to release and reset for the new year. If you want more information, reach out. Until then, be inspired and see the sacred in life. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Dr. Crystal's podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. If today's episode lifted you up, I'd love if you shared it with a friend, subscribe, leave a comment. It helps more people discover these stories of light and transformation. And if you'd like to work with me more closely, head over to www.drcrystalkinnanen.com. And as a thank you for listening to the show, you'll receive $20 off your first session. Details are also in the show notes. Remember, in this time of rapid change and transformation, you are not alone. You are part of a greater shift, and your inspired life matters. Until next time, let's be inspired.